Rav Ephraim's father, Rav Chaim Kachlon, Sheikhye, one of the biggest influences in my life is Rav Chaim. Rav Chaim, over 30 years ago, was a typical, traditional, non-religious Jew. Was a martial artist. I think he was either a brown or a black belt in karate. Very muscular, very fit. Also very educated. Had a few degrees. But as far as religion is concerned, keeping whatever he felt like it. But one thing that he heard the religious people do is that he heard that the religious people talk to Hashem. So he decided that every day he would go to his window at the end of the day and he would just open the window and look at the creation, look at the sky and how big it is, and the heavens and the stars. It was just so wonderful, and he just saw himself talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. No kippah, no special suit, no nothing. Now, he didn't really know how the conversation goes, so he figured, you know what? I'll just ask him for stuff. Hashem, I need a car. Hashem, I don't know how I'm going to get this, but I need a wife. Hashem, I also need to have good health. Hashem, no one else is going to give. I need money too. Hashem, I need this. Hashem. That's what he did. He just simply asked Hashem for a bunch of stuff. And he says himself, over 30 years later, before TeShuva, he says, everything I asked for, he gave me. It's unbelievable. One time I talked to Hashem. I said, Hashem, she's really sick. My neighbor's really sick. I hear her coughing. Please, Hashem, fix it. He says the next day she was okay. All types of things. You just simply talk to Hashem, what people call today Hitbodedut. But Hitbodedut, before Hitbodedut became popular. Simple Jew. Hashem likes simple Jews. But at the same token, Hashem has a certain amount of time He gives you to remain a simple Jew. So he talked to him, and he saw, and things come true, which you would think would naturally make a person, if he sees miracles, hopefully he would do TeShuva. But what did I tell you yesterday? One of the primary lessons that we learned from the 10 plagues, miracles do not make people do TeShuva. You wanting to change as a result of some type of event, something happening, some obligation, some scare, that's what makes people do TeShuva. So one day Rav Chaim, before he became Rav Chaim, goes to a job interview. I think it was in Tel Aviv somewhere. And after the interview, it was around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So you wouldn't say it's 1 o'clock in the morning. No, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. He's driving. And this athletic, extremely healthy person falls asleep on the wheel. Falls asleep at the wheel. And back then, they didn't have power steering, alarms, the car stops by itself as soon as you're off the road. None of that stuff existed back then. Back then, you were lucky if the car moved. Especially in Israel. Remember, Israel is at least one generation behind America as far as development in many places. Today, it's starting to catch up. But for example, when I talk to people about the toys that I played with, nobody my age in America played with the same toys. Maybe your grandparents played with the same toys. Maybe. Some of the stuff we did in Israel, when I was a kid, people my age didn't have. It's hard to relate to people my age. Why? Because they had a completely different childhood. For example, every person my age, their parents had at least one car. At least one car, maybe 2 cars. And that was normal. It had nothing to do with whether they're rich or not. It's just standard in America to everybody have a car. Standard for everybody to have a car. Standard for everybody to have a microwave. Standard to have all these video games and stuff like that. We didn't have video games for at least 10 years after America. Meaning by the time the video games that you guys were throwing in the garbage as antiques, we finally started getting them. car only if you were rich. You want to go somewhere? Walk. Or take a taxi. Or a bus. When I was a kid, we still played with donkeys and horses. Meaning we rode donkeys and horses as kids. Every day you'd see donkeys and horses in the street. That's the way we grew up. That's Israel. America is very different. So, how did I get to this? Every time I think about how do I get to my own childhood all the time? I think that the shiurs are more for me than for you. Have my experiences. So, so now, the Rambam here tells us that if you're going to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're going to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's ways, there's how, there's who, there's one. And if HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you miracles, and you don't pay attention, he's going to have to up the ante. So my uncle, Rav Chaim, after he showed him a few miracles, and he didn't respond the way he was supposed to respond, Hashem upped the ante. He made him tired at a time you're not supposed to be tired. He fell asleep on the wheel. The car hit the rail, flipped a bunch of times in the air, all over the place. And he says, when he tells the story, he goes, from the movies I used to watch movies. He says, from the movies I used to watch, anytime this stuff happens, people would immediately come, ambulances and helicopters right away. So as soon as the car eventually stopped, like pretty much when the car was like rolling everywhere, first thing he thought about his mom, my grandmother, Aliyah Shalom. He says, but after that, I said, so this is how you die. Like this is how it happens. It just happens. This is how you die. It's not like preparation. Hey guys, it was nice to see you. Love you. Here's a hug. Here's a hug. Rabbi Daftaya, Alav Shalom, in his book, he asks some of the dibukim that he talked to, some of the luchot, some of the spirits that he talked to that already died. How come you didn't do tshuva? You knew Torah. He says, I didn't expect to die. By the time I died, the whole thing happened. The last thing I thought of was do tshuva before you die. Yeah, I knew that you could do tshuva. Last minute, say, I'm sorry, do Shema Yisrael, do vidui. I knew about all that stuff when I was alive and everything was good. But no one expects to die. It happens. The overwhelming majority of death is tragic. It's not like the movies where the guy is nice, old man, 99 years old, and he just goes to sleep after, having his 99th birthday, and everybody shows up, and he gives everybody a hug, and I love you, and everyone's great, and no one argues, and he goes to sleep, the old man, and he just goes to the next world quietly. No. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Death usually happens with more like that, more like an action movie. More like an action movie. More like, That's how it happens. That's how death happens most of the time. That's how death happens, Rabotai. So all these dreams that people have, no, I'll do tshuva before I die. Good luck with that. Rav Chaim told us, when I was rolling in the car, I said, this is how you die. I had one experience like that. I can tell you, the feeling that you're going to die is worse than death. One of the surgeries I had, I knew I was going to die. I can't tell you about all the experience, because that's a different lecture of itself, but I can tell you for sure, it's worse than death. Worse. The feeling of emptiness, that this is it. That everything you've done until now is completely meaningless. All the money, the this, the that, like your whole world becomes worth zero. Because this is it. That feeling is worse than death. Worse, it's mar mimavet. Rav Chaim says, I was in the car, rolling. I said, this is it. But eventually it stopped. So I said, oh, so the helicopters are going to come. So the ambulance is going to come. So the people are going to come. I mean, he rolled, he's everywhere. He says, I was waiting, and waiting, and nobody came. No one came. So eventually he says, I had to fulfill the verse, Im en ani li mili. If I'm not for myself, who's for me? Hillel HaZaken said. And he got himself out of the car through the window, and when he was standing next to the car, finally the people came. And they're all looking at the demolished car. Demolished, looking, and everybody's crying. He's like, wow, poor guy, what happened to him? Wow, poor guy, he's scared, you can't even see it. Nothing is left of him. Nothing is left of him, the poor guy. He's like, no, I'm the guy. Huh? No one wanted to believe him in the beginning. He's the guy. Imagine, this car is demolished to nothing. A guy, muscular, with t-shirt and shorts, comes out, nothing untouched. Shtabach Shimo. But he says this, when I came out of the car and I realized the situation, I looked up at the same sky that I look up every night, and I said to Hashem, I understood I was in an obligation here. I understood something supernatural happened here. And I spoke to Hashem and I said, you're not going to regret this. And from that moment on, that's when his tshuva started. How many people have a miraculous event but don't do tshuva? Many. Sadly, many. Sadly, many.